Former President Trump's New York criminal trial enters its final stages this week. Closing arguments from the defense and prosecution are set to begin Tuesday, followed by jury deliberations. Trump attorney Alina Habba stressing the importance of the judge's instructions to the jury.
The jury instructions. The jury instructions are the roadmap for non-attorneys and jurors to follow the law. It's going to be critical, and frankly, at this point, I have zero confidence in the fact that this person, who should not be sitting on the bench right now, will do the right thing and give jury instructions that are in an appropriate manner without any persuasion towards the prosecution. There's my biggest concern. It always has been.
Let's bring in Steve Baric, a former prosecutor who now serves as principal of Baric Law. Steve, thanks for joining us this afternoon. I want to ask you what you think about that roadmap there. Maybe not her evaluation of the judge in this case, but what do you think about how important it is for the judge's instructions here?
Well, so, Rich, the number one thing lawyers fight over are jury instructions. It's the number one reason that criminal cases get reversed by a court of appeal. It's the number one focus of every lawyer, because this is the thing that jurors are going to go back in to deliberations, read it, and apply the testimony that they heard to what they're instructed the law is. So these instructions are crucial. And I'll tell you, Rich, the number one thing that these instructions are going to have to define, and we've never heard it up to this point, what is this law that the prosecution is saying that these phony ledger entries were designed to cover up? That what is this specific federal law that the former president was alleged to have been trying to conceal? That's crucial, and he's going to have to do it very specifically in his instructions. And if I were the defense, I would actually ask that the judge instruct the jury on the elements of that law as well. So these instructions are extremely important. Yeah,
judge is a bit of a trailblazer here because this is a novel legal theory. There's never been anything set like this before. If he doesn't give instructions that, let's say, are viewed as appropriate later on by an appeals court, does he open this up for an appeal by the defense if the judge doesn't exactly do what he's supposed to do here?
Absolutely. I can tell you that the lawyers have spent a lot of time with the judge behind closed doors, working on instructions, arguing over the appropriate instructions. It's the number one thing that lawyers address in an appeal, is that the judge, the trial court judge, falsely instruct the jury on the law. And in this case, it's more relevant than ever because, as you point out, Rich, this is novel. No one's ever been prosecuted for something like this before.
So what kind of arguments do you think we're going to hear at the end of the day? What does the prosecution need to do? What does the defense need to do?
Sure. So I've argued on both sides. I've been a prosecutor. I've argued for the defense. And I can tell you there's some general things. I think that the prosecution is going to try and ask the jury to take a 40,000 foot view on this, meaning look at the overall things, kind of focus on the salacious nature of some of these facts and argue based on that, and kind of gloss over some of the cracks in their case. And what the defense is going to do is they're going to focus on getting this jury to focus specifically on these instructions and then focus on the law and say, look, the credibility of these witnesses, Michael Cohen in particular, you never know what to believe in. And they have the burden. They must prove their case beyond a reasonable doubt, which is a very high standard. And I want to point out one thing too, Rich. In California and most other states, California where I practice, there's an instruction that talks about two reasonable interpretations of circumstantial evidence. And if both of them are reasonable, one that it points to innocence and one that it points to guilt, the jury must, under our system of law, follow the reasonable interpretation of circumstantial evidence that points to innocence. So I would really focus, if I was the defense, on the high bar, the high burden that the prosecution must cross to convict the former president.
So real quick, Steve, do you think the prosecution proved its case here?
Well, I think the prosecution has some challenges. I think when you're relying on witnesses, especially your star witness who has a history of perjury and lying and admitted to stealing, I think that's a challenge. I think what the wild card is in this case is where this case is occurring and the fact that everybody has a predisposed notion regarding arguably one of the most famous human beings in the world, and that's the former President Donald Trump. So I think it's going to be a unique case. If I was to look at it just based on what I've heard and what I think the instructions were going to be, I think that the prosecution is going to have a hard time crossing that threshold. But due to the nature of the case, it's anybody's guess.
Heck of a week ahead. Steve Baric, thanks so much for joining us.
Yeah, for sure. Happy Memorial Day, Rich.
You too.
I'm Steve Doocy.
I'm Brian Kilmeade.
And I'm Ainsley Earhart. And click here to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page to catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis.